Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome. We're so glad that you could join us this morning and join Washington Alliance for Quality Recovery Residences as we have a conversation about motivational interviewing and best practices with that. This is probably one of our most registered events last year, and so we're really excited that we could put it on again for you. We've also extended this webinar by a half hour just to allow more time for material and questions. And I will also be sending the slides as well as the video to all your emails, so you guys can have it as a resource. It will also be posted on walker.org. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Garrett and then let him take it away. So Garrett Costin, he's an LICSW and a SUDP. And after gaining several years of valuable experience in both inpatient and outpatient behavioral health and medical settings as a social worker and clinician, Garrett now works as a behavioral health consultant. He facilitates workshops and trainings on a wide range of topics. He's energized by transformative, person-centered approaches that aim to reduce disparities and inequities in healthcare and society. And with that said, Garrett, you can go ahead and get us started.
All right. Thanks, Brianna.
You're welcome.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm going to share my screen and then let you know what you're in for this morning for the next 2 hours. All right. So this is Motivational Interviewing, Skills for Effective Recovery Conversations. And let me just slide everyone down so I can see the slides as much as possible. Here we go. So as Brianna said, this is the second time we're offering this webinar. It was really popular last year, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to come back and share information about motivational interviewing with everyone again. There's been a lot more recovery residences that have been registered since last year, and eager to have the opportunity to hopefully share some skills and techniques that are useful for you in whatever sort of setting you're working in. I know that there's folks here who operate recovery residences, who work in the recovery residences, and also in other settings in the recovery community. So that being said, let me first give a little disclaimer, just to make it clear that this morning's session is not a clinical training in motivational interviewing skills per se. That simply wouldn't be possible with just one introductory session. So I hope no one's going to be disappointed, but you're not going to be able to expect to master motivational interviewing skills or gain proficiency in the skills by the end of this webinar, as that typically requires about at least 20 or 30 hours of instruction, followed by several months or even years of practice experience with the skills. But what I do hope to provide everyone with this webinar this morning is a solid introduction to motivational interviewing for folks who are curious to learn a bit more about the techniques. And I really hope that for folks, especially who are interested in possibly going into counseling or peer counselor roles in the future, that this sort of piques their curiosity and inspires them to dig a little bit deeper when they have the opportunity. And so with our webinar today, we will watch some examples and demonstration videos. But unfortunately, we won't have time to offer any individual practice opportunities today. But towards the end, I am going to share a few techniques that hopefully you'll be able to implement in your recovery residences pretty quickly. And towards the end, finally, at the last slide, I'm going to share information about some additional resources and opportunities where you can learn more or get training experience in motivational interviewing. So to tell you a little bit about the plan for today, first we'll start by I'm going to tell you about my background in motivational interviewing, how I came to be a big proponent or advocate for the techniques. And then we'll go into making sure everybody understands what motivational interviewing is and what it's not. I'll quickly go over the history and sort of the uses or applications of motivational interviewing, and then we'll get into some of the nuts and bolts. There are 4 elements that really comprise the spirit, the foundational attitude that we bring to motivational interviewing to support folks in recovery. And so we'll talk about the spirit of MI, and then do an overview of the 4 core skills. They're known as the OARs, the open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries that we use to generate effective conversations about positive behavior change and recovery. And then the 4 processes of motivational interviewing, the skills that we use to get to the heart of, or the goal of motivational interviewing, which is getting to change talk, eliciting change talk from folks in recovery. As I mentioned, I'll share 2 tools that you can use to start implementing to have more effective recovery conversations, to feel like you have a couple more techniques in your toolkit. And we'll try to end the sort of the didactic portion about 15 minutes early, so we have time for Q&A and discussion towards the end. So as Brianna told you, I am a behavioral health consultant. I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker and also a substance use disorder professional. And I've been really fortunate to have had training in motivational interviewing and opportunities to practice motivational interviewing for about 8 years now. When I was in my master's program at the University of Washington, I received a fellowship to have a year of intensive training in motivational interviewing. And then from during that time, and also for about 5 years after, I had opportunities to utilize my motivational interviewing skills with folks in outpatient and inpatient treatment settings. I also had the opportunity to start teaching motivational interviewing, if you will, in sort of informally, when I worked with Valley Cities Behavioral Health in Seattle for 2 years. And again, I instructed folks in motivational interviewing when I worked for Valley Medical Center in the health coach program. So I've used motivational interviewing in both behavioral health and also medical settings. And I'd like to tell you a little bit, if you'll allow me to get on my motivational interviewing soapbox for a couple of minutes, I'd like to just share with you why I'm so passionate about motivational interviewing. I've really seen consistently the transformative power and the benefits that motivational interviewing can have for folks who are struggling with change and having difficulty making sustainable, healthy changes for their health. I would like to see motivational interviewing even more broadly adopted and practiced in all sorts of recovery support settings, because I know personally how very helpful it can be for both staff and folks in recovery. I really like motivational interviewing because it's extremely individual centered or person centered. And at the heart of motivational interviewing, there's respect for our universal psychological human need for autonomy and self-determination in our lives. And because of that respect for each individual and for their own autonomy and their own right, their right to make their own decisions, it really helps us as folks who are supporting those in recovery to avoid generating stress, shame, and conflict in our work. So, also MI conversations, you're going to see here pretty shortly in some videos I'm going to share. MI conversations are very different from traditional or standard recovery conversations where the tone is often sort of, I'm the expert, I have the experience and the knowledge, and you need to listen to me because I know what's best for you. Motivational interviewing is very different because of the centralized focus on respecting and attempting to fully understand and empathize with each individual and their ways of seeing things and their determination of what's important for them in their lives. So even though motivational interviewing has been around for several decades now, and there's expansive research supporting its use and demonstrating its positive clinical outcomes, I feel that it's still something of an underutilized technique that we have that does have the potential to help a lot of folks who haven't been helped or well served with traditional top-down and directive forms of recovery support. And that's why I really appreciate having the opportunity to share more about motivational interviewing with you all today. So to get into sort of defining or explaining what motivational interviewing is, I found several definitions that I've pulled together from different things I've read, different things that have been published about motivational interviewing. And this first definition is hopefully a good one to begin with. Motivational interviewing is a conversation style designed to empower people towards healthy behavior change by supporting them to get in touch with their own values, capacities, and resources for change. So what's sort of unique about motivational interviewing is, one, it's a conversation style. We're not speaking at someone or telling them what we think they need to hear and they need to listen. In motivational interviewing, we as staff or as clinicians, as counselors, as peers, should really be doing much less of the speaking than the other individual. And with motivational interviewing, rather than telling someone what they need to do or what they need to change or trying to convince them that they need to change, we're really sort of gently guiding them towards empowering them and empowering them to uncover their motivation for why they might be considering making some changes in their behavior. And then instead of telling them what they need to do or instructing them on how to do it, we're supporting them to get in touch and sort of uncover their own experiences in life and their own preferences to sort of inform what might work for them or what might be good for them to attempt at this time. Something about motivational interviewing that's a little funny, a little strange, I'm sure you'll notice it, is that there are lots of acronyms. So to begin with, the first acronym for today that I'm going to share with you is about the rules of MI. The 4 rules of MI, what we need to follow in order to be practicing motivational interviewing correctly or to the aligned with the spirit of motivational interviewing, is first to resist the writing reflex. And that's our human instinct as compassionate people, as people that don't want to see others suffering, to sort of fix things for people, to tell them what they need to do to solve problems, and to prevent them from making mistakes. What we know about behavior change is that people actually need to have the opportunities to learn from their own mistakes and to learn from themselves. And it's much more effective if others aren't trying to instruct or direct someone on how to make changes in their lives or protect themselves. So we sort of suppress the urge or for the writing reflex, and we always keep it in the back of our mind. We want to prevent harm. We want to gently guide people towards making healthy decisions, but we're not going to be direct with it or overpowering with it. The next rule is to always attempt to understand the individual's own motivations. If we can get in touch with what's important for them and the reasons that they might be considering making positive change, it's going to be much more effective if we can amplify their own motivations rather than try to instill motivations that we might have or that we assume others would share with us. Next is to listen with empathy. That goes along with doing much less of the speaking than there might be on our part in traditional recovery conversations. We're really trying to listen to develop a accurate understanding of how another person is feeling and where they're at with their lives and their behavior. And in our context, we're talking about behavior around substance use. And finally, we want to empower the individual, not take away power. We want to in a way share power, share the power that we can with the individual to help them grasp and build up their belief that they can tackle these very difficult changes around their substance use. So before we continue, this is the first step, or the first stage, where I'd like to interact with you all a little bit. If anyone is comfortable unmuting yourself, this is a great opportunity. I'd like to invite you to share your experience with motivational interviewing, or your opinion about it. This helps with knowing sort of where we're all at before we get into the nuts and bolts, before we get into the details. If anyone has any background or has learned about motivational interviewing in the past, or if you yourself have received motivational interviewing style counseling, I'd love it if you could share a little bit about your experience or your opinions. What do you know about motivational interviewing? How have you experienced it? And you're also welcome to put your comments in the chat box. We'll read them out.
Hey guys, so I own a full service strategic real estate firm. As part of that, I took a class from UC Berkeley about motivational interviewing. And it was a really good class, just to how to get to the bottom of things. There is a term in sales that buyers are liars because people withhold information, right? And it's super important to get to the bottom of this. What's your motivation? What's your why? And we build on that. So and one of the hardest things for me, for example, is that I'm extremely motivated. I'm extremely opinionated. And my hardest thing is to shut up, like, because so many times I'm like, oh, I totally know a shortcut. And yes. So yeah, I have a fair amount of information on that. And I'm using it in my everyday practice to find out who the people in front of me are and build on that.
Thank you, Mariana. Yeah, I really resonate with what you shared about, sort of biting your tongue or holding your tongue. There's so many times with motivational interviewing where I feel like I know I'm not supposed to tell someone what to do or give my opinion directly, but I think this is a situation where it's justified, and usually I'm wrong, and I'm really grateful when I'm able to resist that instinct and find it to be much more effective. Anybody else?
I'll go. I've received a fair amount of MI training, and I think for me, what comes most naturally is affirmations for clients. So that maybe I over affirm sometimes. I think what I struggle with, though, is working with people who are like in crisis to any degree and remembering like what questions could be helpful to ask. So the ones that have been helpful for me are like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how far are you on making this decision? Why is it not lower? But I think I just have a hard time remembering good like phrases to use for clients, and I think that's why I don't use it more.
Yeah, thank you, Lila. I'm glad that you have some foundation in motivational interviewing already. And I definitely believe that even though much of this content may be review for you, it's always valuable to go back and review and refresh our skills and our memories about the skills. And two of the things you mentioned, affirmations and also the readiness ruler, sort of asking someone to identify how ready they are or how confident they are about change. We are going to be covering that today, so I'm glad you're here, and maybe we'll hear from you, some more input from you later. Anybody else experienced sort of the effectiveness or outcomes with motivational interviewing? Okay, well, I am a social worker, so I'm used to waiting in silence, but we'll continue on. I do want to say that we welcome comments and questions anytime in the chat box, and Brianna will let me know if there's something urgent or especially interesting or useful, and be free to interrupt me. And we'll also have a couple more times where I'll invite you all to unmute yourselves and share. But let's get back to the slides for now. All right, so another definition, second of I think 3 or 4 that I'm going to use to sort of really try to provide a broad perspective on what motivational interviewing is. This definition states, motivational interviewing is a collaborative conversation style to increase or strengthen a person's own motivation for and commitment to healthy change. So I'm sure that many of you can recall many times when you've had conversations with folks attempting to help them, attempting to support them to make positive change in their lives. And what you really often struggle with is identifying or helping the individual identify what their motivation is, and then bolstering or amplifying that motivation. And then once you've identified their motivation, identified some sort of reason or energy towards that might support them to making that change, then evoking a commitment to actually embarking on the path towards change, talking about the next steps, action steps, sort of building accountability and making it more likely that steps towards healthy change is going to actually be made. And so motivational interviewing is directly designed to help with those struggles, those difficulties that often come up in recovery conversations, those sort of points where we can get stuck with somebody who's struggling with behavior change. Next is a more technical or clinical definition of motivational interviewing. This one also focuses on the collaborative nature of MI. MI is a collaborative, goal-oriented method of communication with particular attention to the language of change. It is designed to strengthen an individual's motivation for and movement toward a specific goal by eliciting and exploring the person's own reasons and arguments for change. So I think at this point, we've tried a couple definitions to get our heads around what the techniques and approach of motivational interviewing is. It might be helpful to watch some conversations that really help illustrate the power and the effects that motivational interviewing techniques can have. So we have 2 videos. These are both conversations about change with the same individual, Sal, the man in black, and a clinician. In the video, the focus is on improving Sal's asthma symptoms, and it's the clinician believes that his dog is worsening his asthma symptoms. If we can imagine that the focus is instead on the effect of his smoking, either marijuana or meth, the smoking of the drugs are worsening his asthma, that's going to be much more relevant for us. But nonetheless, this is a really good illustration of how conversations can go when we're not individual centered and we're not using effective communication techniques. And then we'll watch a second video where it's more of a motivational interviewing style. So this first one is just a couple minutes, and give me a thumbs up if you can. I'm sure that you can't. Let me make sure that I share sound. I've done this enough times that I should always remember to share the sound. All right, here we go. Please wave your arms if you're not hearing this sound.
I understand that your asthma symptoms have been just really out of control. So we need to look at some of the ways that you can get healthy and not be back here again.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to come back here. But the doc said, Oscar, my dog, is connected to my asthma symptoms. But the ridiculous part is I've had him for 12 years before, and now it's a problem.
Well, you sound a bit surprised by that, but I'm sure that you've seen some of the material that the clinic gave you about asthma symptoms and managing your asthma, and pets are a really big source of problems in that respect.
Yeah, but let me just clarify. I've seen the materials. I have them. I haven't read them. All I've been doing is taking the medicine, so I don't know that much about this.
Well, wait a second, Sal. What do you mean if you, as an, to be informed about? I'm just really taken aback by that, because I understand from your chart that you have a young baby, a new baby.
Giancarlo, yeah.
And you are very concerned about your health. You want to be there for your baby, and that you've already taken some steps. You've almost quit smoking, which is fantastic. So the next step is to really deal with the dog, deal with the pet. I know it's going to be hard to do that, but there are always people who will adopt animals. I'm sure that you have friends or family members.
This is a little too much. Wait, now, first of all, Giancarlo is taken care of. That's fine. He doesn't have no asthma from the dog. It's just me. I don't have...
It's you that I'm worried about, Sal. It's you that I'm worried about, okay? The symptoms are worse. You've had 2 or 3 major asthma attacks. And do you appreciate how this is a risk to your life, that there are some adults with severe asthma who actually can die as a result of their symptoms? It truly is something to take very, very seriously. I can't emphasize that enough.
So Oscar's gonna make me die. He hasn't made me die in 12 years. And the doctor's saying, oh, I don't know if it's the stress, the finances, the drinking. So what are we doing saying Oscar could make me die? I've had him for 12 years.
Sal, do you understand that what happened 6 years ago or 10 years ago, your asthma is progressively getting worse. You know very well that the puffers, the strength of the medication is getting higher and higher. And there's only so much that can be done with medication alone. You know this.
Well, they can keep giving me more medicine and give me the strongest one, and I'll keep Oscar.
Sal, you're almost on the strongest one. And if Oscar's that important to you, then do you put Oscar higher than your baby, than your wife? Like, that makes no sense to me. Do you understand how important this is?
I understand that. I don't think you get my situation. I've had this dog for 12 years. So I'm not just gonna up and get him out of my house when I don't even know if that's the main thing.
All right, so that was an illustration of something that's not motivational interviewing. But even though I've seen this video several times, it always brings back conversations I've had with folks who are so adamant that all the difficulties, all the problems they're facing in life, it has nothing to do with the substances they're using. It has to do with, you know, the stress that their girlfriend is causing, or problems that's been imposed on them externally. And so it's interesting how we can see this conversation is about Sal, but he's really not willing to consider giving up his dog in order to possibly improve his health. But we can also see that the clinician doesn't seem to be very effective in helping him open his mind or gain some insight. So let's see in the next video if there's any difference in what we're seeing here. Here, you're going to notice quite a big change.
So where you said you'd like to start, Sal, is talking about your asthma and specifically about your dog and how one is affecting the other.
Yeah, my asthma's just been out of control lately, and my doctor says it might be connected to Oscar.
So what can you let me know, or what do you know about your asthma and the things that affect it or might make it worse?
I've got allergy testing. It's just the dust makes it bad. I thought the smoking was the main thing. That's cut down. And then they said the drinking might contribute to it too. So I got a lot of different things I'm working on. So that's what I know. The drinking, the smoking, and the dust that I got the scratch test for.
Right.
And that's what I know, and that I take the medicine for it.
Okay. And that your pet has never been mentioned as a concern?
No, I've had it for 12 years, and now it's a concern. I don't understand.
Yeah, and I can see that you've already worked hard to make some changes. You've almost quit smoking. You're just down to your last couple of cigarettes, and you're not even smoking those in the house. So your house is totally smoke-free.
Just at work with the boys there.
Yeah, okay. And you have also thought about cutting back on alcohol, and I think you mentioned done a little bit towards that.
I'm a couple down. I used to drink 4 a night. Now I'm down to 3 at
Okay.
least.
Okay. So now, almost like that's not good enough. Like now you have to. Now it's the dog, and and now what's next?
What's next? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, there is certainly a lot of evidence that pets in the home and the dander from their fur can make asthma worse. But I wonder, what are your experiences with Oscar, you know, when he's in the house or maybe sleeping near you or you're around him? What happens with your asthma symptoms?
Well, we keep him clean. Like, he's cleaned. So all the dander doesn't really make sense, but I have been noticing that sometimes when he comes on the bed or just beside, I wheeze a little bit, but I think it has to do with the hair in my lungs cleaning itself up from the smoking. So I don't know if it's, that's where I'm confused. I don't know how this could be happening.
So it doesn't make total sense to you that it's all Oscar's fault and that, that that's the only solution.
But the wheezing is something that I've definitely noticed a little bit.
I guess I also wonder whether, regardless of if your asthma symptoms are connected to Oscar, that maybe part of you feels like it's worth it because he's been such a big part of your life for so long.
I just want some medicine, and I want to keep Oscar, and I want to feel better about myself because I'm making all these changes in my life, and it honestly feels like my nose is just above the water.
Yeah, and in the end, you know, whatever you do about Oscar, about your asthma, about all the other things that we talked about on that agenda setting worksheet, I mean, you are in the driver's seat, Sal. It really is your choice.
Yeah, no, that feels good that at least it is my choice. I just feel like I'm not feeling happy about just all these different things that are coming up. And I'm kind of sad about things. And I don't know what to do.
There's a lot of decisions and a lot of change with your wife, with the new baby, and now thinking about looking after your health and wanting to be healthy for your wife and your baby.
I want Giancarlo to grow up with Oscar, so he has his friend when he's young too. And it's a lot of stress and a lot of things you got to think about, and I'm not feeling good about it.
So what would need to happen, or how would you know when or if you ever did have to make a decision about whether to keep Oscar with you or not?
Man, how would I know? I don't know. I think if my asthma got really bad and the medicine, if she gave me the strongest medicine and it wasn't working, that would be the way right now, because I can't see, I don't know how I'm going to give this dog up.
Yeah. And
Okay, let's stop there. So this left me with the second video really leaves me with a much different feeling. I'm noticing that I'm not bothered by these two people sort of struggling in conversation. There's so much less conflict. It's so much more of a collaboration and a comfortable, supportive conversation in the second video. So I'd like to ask you if you're willing, if you can share sort of your reactions. What struck you as noticeable? What were some of the major differences between the first and the second video? And also, what did you notice about the difference in the client's reactions and responses to the clinician in the second video versus the first one? Feel free to unmute yourselves or enter comments in the chat box.
So for me, it's very clear, and I know it in my own practice, that energy leads energy. So like when you are calmer, you keep a certain tone that sets the tone for the other one, because we are subconsciously mirroring so many times. So if you're carrying that conversation a second time, that kept him quiet, calmer and more open. So this invitation, the tone is an invitation to openness. So that is hugely important. And like in the first one, that was just like a robot talking out of her ass, and it was just like absolutely no like listening to the client's concern. If you're not listening to the concern, how can you move forward at all? And that's just create roadblocks. It's going to lose the patient's or the client's trust. It's not good for anybody.
Yes, thank you. You raised a lot of good points. When I see the first video, one thing that comes into my head about the interviewer's sort of position or her tone is codependence. She is really wrapped up and lets herself get reactive about Sal's situation, which he doesn't respond to very well. And just as Mariana said, he sort of meets her tone, and it escalates from there. She's frustrating herself. She's getting irritated that he's not agreeing with her. And he's sort of, because of the way she's coming at him, he's sort of digging in his heels and is absolutely closing his mind from considering anything she's saying or being willing to receive any of what's possibly helpful information for him. Yeah. How about any other reactions or comments, Sarah?
Yeah, I would say the thing that stuck out for me the most was it seemed like her agenda or her intent, right? In the first conversation, she had her mind made up, I want you to believe this, and if you don't believe it, I felt like there was maybe belittling comments or attitude, almost like putting him down, shaming him. Whereas the second one, you could tell the goal was just to help him figure it out, and she literally said, whatever you decide. So again, that empowerment piece that you talked about really stuck out. And I really didn't like her. Like, I just didn't like her in the first video. And so I'm happy, good to know it's all acting and all that. But those are the two things that stuck out for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Sarah brings up a good point. I think actually, if we can have some generosity towards her in the first video, we can say, her intent is to help Sal. Her intent is to help him get some relief from his asthma symptoms and to try to help him. I think that she does have good intentions, but what we can see in the two styles of conversation is that sort of the intention, the instinct to help somebody and to share information that we think is important for them, it's really not very effective if you don't have sort of the techniques to help somebody receive them. And so it's important to know how to sort of skillfully use your compassion and your instinct to help others and to want to support others. I see a comment in the chat box from Adiola. She says, seems as though the interviewer in the first video was listening to respond, whereas in the second video, she was seeking to understand. Yes. In the first, yeah, I absolutely agree. That's a note that I took, is that she's really sort of slowing everything down and listening to him carefully in the second video. It's an attempt to understand where he's coming from. And in the first video, she's interrupting, she's arguing. Yeah, how about any comments about the difference in how Sal responded to the two styles?
I was just going to add real quick. I
Mhm.
believe with Sal in the first one, again, he just kind of continued, right? There was not going to be a conversation to help support him to even have the idea of other changes that he could create because of the, like you said, the closed questions or her inability, right, to be able to ask the questions that he needed, right? So in my role, I work with a lot of individuals and also with staff as well. And I think when you're a helper, sometimes you believe you're helping individuals by kind of having that back and forth conversation, maybe like you would have with a friend, maybe, but still knowing that individuals, unfortunately, then they stay, right? They stay stagnant, they stay in that situation. And we don't want to do that. Where in this second, you could see where she starts, like you said, slowing down, listening to understand. I appreciate that comment as well. I thought that was so important, isn't it? Because we tend not to do that. And then prepared, like she seemed prepared for this conversation as opposed to the first one. She did not seem like she was prepared. And then also I appreciate on that second one, because again, I love to see the examples between, in this conversation, the motive MI was not used, and in this one it was, because then she just the questions and being able to kind of almost do an inventory for him too, like here's these other options as well, but saying it in a way that he's the one, right? He's the one that's then adding to, like, oh yeah, I can, I definitely have this situation, I can do this next. So yeah, I really appreciate that example. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I'm glad it was helpful. And yes, that's one of the primary lessons in motivational interviewing, or something that was sort of built into the design of motivational interviewing, is the recognition that if we can get someone or encourage them or support them to share or express their personal reasons for change, reasons why they might consider change, or what would need to happen in order for them to try making a change, that is so much more effective than us trying to install that in them or telling them why they need to change. So yeah, we could see that in the second video. The clinician, her stance, her attitude is one of much more curiosity. She's seeking to understand Sal rather than attempting to control him and telling him what he needs to do and why he should change. And you can see that it's much more effective. Now he's the one coming up with reasons or possibilities, and she's facilitating, sort of helping him walk through the discovery process. Yeah. So the final question that I had about those conversations was, in your personal experience, which conversation style do you think is more typical in treatment and recovery settings? Do you think style 1 is more common to your experience, or do you see folks sort of having the skills and the techniques to facilitate conversations closer to the second video?
I think I've seen a little bit of both, in terms of, number one, maybe not being as argumentative, but definitely like, these are the changes you need to make. Don't come back until you make those changes. And then also, like, I noticed in the second one, she was a lot more empathetic to how those changes would affect him, because it's easier for her to say, well, just get rid of the dog, whereas that's a big loss for him. And so I think at least in this area, like, it's becoming a little bit more like gray area, not as quite like hard line. If you're not doing it right, come back when you're doing it right. But it's definitely, I think, a process.
Yeah, thank you. That's another reason why I appreciate having motivational interviewing as an approach to utilize, because it's really something that we can use rather than just defaulting to, well, the individual isn't ready. They don't have what it takes. They're not at the point in their life to make sustainable positive change. So therefore, we can't do anything for them. This is something that we can an approach that we can implement with folks, whereas otherwise they're the folks that we see getting dismissed, or like Lila said, being told, well, do this or come back when you're willing to, because that's the only option. That's all we can do for you at this time. Yeah. Okay. Just to wrap up the videos, I made a couple. I think we covered a lot of this, but just some of the differences that I noticed here. The first conversation, I'm sure you would agree, is very top down and directive and conversational. She's the expert. He's the one that needs to listen to her. Whereas in the second one, it's much more collaborative, compassionate, and it's sort of a partnership style conversation. They're sort of on equal footing. She has some suggestions and some experience and some knowledge, but she respects that he's the expert of his own life, and he gets to decide what's important to him and what he's willing to do and not do. And that tone sort of helps him open his mind or consider things that he wouldn't in the first case. Also, we see in the first one that as a result of her tone, he becomes very defensive. He shuts down and he digs in against change. He is adamant that he's not going to consider getting rid of the dog, and he doesn't want to hear any suggestion that the dog is making his health worse. Whereas in the second one, the result is that he really opens up. He becomes very thoughtful. He starts expressing and sharing his emotions, you can see. And that tells me that he's sensing that this is a safe conversation, and that he's with someone he can trust, with opening up, with being a little bit vulnerable. And that leads to having a much more impactful, effective conversation. Okay, so this, I promise, is the fourth and final just straight definition of motivational interviewing that I'm going to share. But here it is. Motivational interviewing is a person-centered counseling method for addressing and resolving the common problem of ambivalence about change. So here in this definition, it highlights not only that it's very individual-centered, but also that it helps with ambivalence. And ambivalence, that's mixed feelings, that's having contradictory ideas, it's having difficulty weighing the pros and cons and deciding which one outweighs more, feeling stuck with a decision. And ambivalence is very common with folks attempting to think about possible change in their lives, especially when substances or co-occurring issues are involved. The drugs have worked and helped for a long time, someone might feel. The drugs might be what makes it possible for them to keep going and to survive and to cope. And at the same time, they recognize they might be developing some insight that also there's some bad things that come along with the substances. And that's where the ambivalence is. And even though ambivalence can be something that we as individuals struggle with, and we also, we also struggle with when we're trying to support somebody else, ambivalence is not a bad thing. Ambivalence is actually a sign that there's something there to work with. There's something there that we can explore more and hopefully utilize to help someone sort of tip the scales in favor and increase their readiness towards making positive change. The absence of ambivalence, the negative opposite of ambivalence would be despair or a loss of all hope. and that's really when there's tragedy and difficulty in supporting someone. So just a few more things about motivational interviewing as an approach before we get into some of the history and the nuts and bolts of it, or some of the skills, is that it is not a full comprehensive treatment approach. It's not going to be the only thing that gets somebody into sustained recovery or lifelong sobriety. It's more likely going to be used at the beginning to help somebody increase their commitment to change and their commitment to recovery, and then utilized in conversations throughout your time supporting someone in early and medium term recovery in order to maintain their commitment and to help them feel continued support. It's also not an all things for all people in all situations type of method. There are times, somebody mentioned, I think somebody mentioned earlier about trying to remember how to use motivational interviewing skills and the right questions to ask in motivational interviewing style when you're working with someone in crisis. And that might not be the most effective time to use motivational interviewing. The target population, or sort of the ideal scenario or individual to use motivational interviewing techniques with is first people who have some desire to make a positive change. They've already there's something that's sort of causing them to struggle with that ambivalence and to start thinking about reasons why making change might be good for them. Also, using motivational interviewing is very helpful with people who already have some initial insight about their need for change. And this can be internal insight that they've generated, feeling that their health is worsening and knowing that they don't want to continue seeing their health decline, or relationships with their families and friends worsen. Or it could be external reasons and external insight sort of imposed on them, such as a court order or the threat or possibility of losing their children, and developing insight. I need to change because the things that are causing me problems are not worth losing my children or losing other things in my life for. Also, people who have already started making some attempts or taking some sort of baby steps or initial steps towards change, but they need some support in order to make their change more long lasting. They're excellent folks who can be supported really well with motivational interviewing. And finally, going back to ambivalence, people who are currently sort of teeter-tottering, they're on an ambivalent swing, but they're on the fence about whether they're ready to make a change, or whether even another attempt would be worth it. Can be supported and sort of guided towards increasing their motivation and their empowerment for making another attempt. The great thing about using motivational interviewing with folks who are feeling sort of despair about, because they've made some attempts already, but they've failed, or they've had a slip or a relapse, is that with motivational interviewing, we can focus on what they've learned from those slips or relapses, and how that experience can actually be very useful and can help inform future attempts, and how they can actually make future attempts more likely to succeed. So the purpose of motivational interviewing is to help those people in the target population above, which is a huge group of people. It's probably the largest percentage of any other sort of categories of folks who are struggling with behavioral health issues. It's to help those people sort of uncover the motivation and resources that are inside themselves, but that they're maybe not quite in touch with, not quite aware of. But help them get in touch with those so that they can get unstuck and have the energy and the drive to move forward, to commit, and to take steps towards sustainable change. So a few slides on what motivational interviewing is not. We saw a lot of this in the first video example. But with motivational interviewing, we really avoid giving unsolicited advice, opinions, or information. We saw this in the first video where she was telling him what he needs to do, and sharing information before she sort of made sure that he was open and receptive to it. So with motivational interviewing, we always ask permission before offering advice or our opinions or any sort of information that we think might be helpful for someone, because we know that if we can obtain their permission, if we can obtain their agreement, they're going to be much more receptive to it. And even better than asking permission before offering advice or opinions is getting the person to the point where they directly seek and solicit our advice. Sometimes I notice, at times when I feel like, oh, I can really feel motivational interviewing is effective in this conversation. I can feel like I'm on point with my MI skills, is when I get to the point where I ask someone, well, can I tell you what I think, or can I tell you what I think I might do, or if I were in your situation? And they respond by saying, yes, please do. I'm waiting for you to tell me what you think. And I think, okay, I withheld my instinct to tell them my opinion or to share information with them so effectively that I've got them now eager to hear what I have to say, and they're really going to be receptive of it. And that's sort of the golden space, the golden period. Also, motivational interviewing is not coming up with all of the ideas or the reasons that somebody else should change. That sort of goes back to codependency, or being overly involved in trying to control someone else's life or to save them. We think that they need saving, and they're not in agreement with that. So that goes back to sort of the partnership, the collaboration, and the power sharing. It really needs to be at minimum 50-50, but even better if we can support the individual to come up with the majority of reasons that they might want to consider change. We also don't attempt to use persuasion or coercion to sort of, in a way, warn somebody of what could happen to them if they don't change. People who are really firmly, hold on just a second, Anne. People who are really firmly committed to not changing are not going to respond well. What we're going to do is inspire. We're going to elicit their reasons for not changing, and they're going to dig in if we try to tell them what could happen or what we could do to them if they don't change. Yes, Anne, I saw your hand raised. Go ahead.
So for not coming up with the reasons why they had to change, I understand that. And so I kind of have like a dual role sometimes, where I'm in the management piece of it, but I'm also on the support side. But if it's impacting the housing and it's lease violations and things like that, and the behaviors of what they're engaging in is spilling out where it's impacting the community and the neighbors. So how do you approach that with them? Because these are very serious reasons why they could jeopardize their housing, or it's impacting the health and safety of the public and the community, those things. So what would be the best approach for that in a situation like that?
That's an excellent question, and it's sort of a difficult question. My initial response would be that motivational interviewing would be most effective in supporting someone before they make any major violations to your house's policies, or to the standards or the safety of the community, because understandably there's times when violations are going to have consequences, and it's not a time, it's likely not a time where you can sit down with someone and say, let's have a conversation about why you think you might be better off not violating the policies or the rules if it's already started happening. So I know that probably doesn't answer your question very well, but I think that I would say with what I think you're describing, it's going to be a time where motivational interviewing techniques could be effective in helping someone not be completely derailed because of the consequences of their violations. But also there's times when there are actual consequences. Does that sort of help, Anne, or is there more specifically?
It does, because we've had the supports in place long-term, and we have a SUDP professional working with the individual, but it's also become very serious. And so sometimes I have to take the other side, where it's going to be more on the consequence side and leaving the other support to the other staff. But I have some upcoming appointments we're going to have with a couple of individuals to it's going to have to be about the consequences and how can we support you so that this doesn't become a consequence if they're open to that change, because it's becoming really serious. So.
Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that you're part of a team, and I understand that your role is different from maybe his counselor or his direct treatment provider, and I think that the best case scenario is that an individual is getting motivational interviewing type support and having those facilitated conversations all along through their recovery process, because if it's done effectively and the person is really connecting with the people offering those conversations, then the best case scenario is that it's going to avoid the type of situation that it sounds like your resident is in now. Yeah, but thank you for your question. All right, let me get back to the slides. All right, also something here, the last point on this slide, cheerleading and bright siding. That's really not motivational interviewing. What I'm talking about with these terms, cheerleading and bright siding, is when we try to sort of bolster somebody's commitment to change or help them look on the bright side. Things aren't so bad. You can do it. I know you can do it, and I'm going to be so happy watching you succeed. Oftentimes that falls flat in the person that we're hoping to support, because it can seem very shallow, and it's often also sort of felt or experienced as somebody sort of trying to wrap up the conversation, avoid the mess, avoid the difficult points of the conversation, and just wrap it up with a neat bow by saying, I think you're going to do great. And so motivational interviewing is much more pragmatic and slowed down, and it is sort of a process that can unfold over the course of a longer period of time with several conversations. And although affirmations are a part of motivational interviewing, as some of you know, affirmations are also earned. They're not just platitudes that are put on somebody in hopes of bolstering their enthusiasm or their motivation. So a couple of other quick things to cover that motivational interviewing is not. Motivational interviewing is not the staff or the professional doing most of the talking. It's motivational interviewing is not using a top-down or an expert novice tone where we have all of the knowledge and the experience and you need to learn from us. It's also not trying to use logic or rationale to explain why change should happen, but it's uncovering the individual's own reason for change. And we're also, we with motivational interviewing, we really take a backseat with our own experiences. With many of us have had success in overcoming behavioral health issues or substance use issues. And it's also our instinct to try to inspire or motivate others by sharing our successes. but that all draws the focus away from the individual and places it more on us, and can almost seem like we're seeking praise, we're seeking validation, where really, we're only sharing our own opinions or our own experiences if we get to that point and it's appropriate. And so motivational interviewing is also very much avoiding the attitude of what worked for me will work for you. I know what you need to do. This is exactly what you need to do, and you'll have success. And if you vary from that, I don't know. I can't help you. I can't promise. So what's common for all of these techniques that we try to avoid with motivational interviewing is that what we see is that they really lead to frustration for both the client and the interviewer, because they increase resistance to change, and they increase an individual's motivation not to change, because they are not respecting their own personal experiences, values, and right to self-determination. So quickly, I'm gonna, just to try to catch us up on the agenda, I'm gonna go through the next couple slides really quickly about the history and the development of motivational interviewing. So motivational interviewing was developed by two clinical psychologists, one American, Bill Miller, and British Stephen Rolnick, in the early 1980s. They wrote their first papers describing some of the techniques of motivational interviewing in 1983. And their original paper, The Foundations of Motivational Interviewing, evolved out of their observational research that they conducted in the late 1970s with what they termed inveterate alcoholics or incurable alcoholics. They were interested in knowing what influenced folks who were really determined to have a very low potential of ever maintaining or attaining recovery from alcoholism, gaining sobriety from alcoholism. What might influence those folks, that population, to either resist making attempts or attempting to make healthy changes? And this research was carried out in inpatient treatment facilities and also public housing facilities for folks that were considered to have very low chance of recovery. And so the original use of motivational interviewing, the original intention with motivational interviewing was as a technique to support individuals struggling with substance use disorders, specifically alcohol. But as motivational interviewing has had more of a research base built up over the decades, and it's been found to be effective in a broad range of settings, it's been adapted for many different areas, including psychological disorders, problematic gambling, primary health settings, chronic health management, parenting skills, and also the criminal justice system. So this is just a sampling of some of the many books that have been published about motivational interviewing. The big one here, the purple one, is the third edition of Miller and Rolnick's foundational text on motivational interviewing, subtitled Helping People Change. And then you see here several other books that have adapted motivational interviewing or made it specific for different contexts, such as mental health, primary health, nutrition and fitness, in schools. I saw a new book about motivational interviewing the other day about MI with repeat offenders. And there's also now starting to be some self-help type books, workbooks that are intended for folks to use independently with motivational interviewing skills. So I want to let you listen to one of the founders, Bill Miller, describe motivational interviewing, the approach that he developed with Stephen Rolnick. This is a short video, but it's a really nice illustration.
Fundamentally, motivational interviewing involves a change in role, a change in how you think about what you're doing. You're not the expert there to fix the person. You don't have to make the person change. The truth is, in fact, that you can't make a person change. You don't have to be the one to come up with all the good ideas. a person with really good ideas is sitting across from you and may have better ideas than you do. It's not like a competitive sport. It's not like wrestling where you try to defeat and pin and outsmart and outwit the person. It's more like dancing together, moving together, adjusting your movements to the other person. Overall, motivational interviewing is not a directive approach. Neither is it just a following approach. Following is listening to the person and kind of going wherever they go. Motivational interviewing is in the middle, between those two, and we describe it as guiding. If you go to another country and you hire a guide, you don't expect the guide just to follow you around. That's not what you're looking for. Neither do you expect the guide to order you when you will arrive, when you will leave, what you want to see, what you will enjoy, what you're going to do. That's not a good guide either. Good guiding involves good listening, as well as using your own expertise. A good guide will find out where you want to go, what you're interested in, what you're hoping for on this journey, and then help you get there using his or her own expertise, enjoyably, safely, efficiently, perhaps. That's the guide's job. Not solely directing, not solely following. There's some of each in it, but it's a blend of those things. This may or may not be the way you've been thinking about your own work, but we invite you to try it out.
All right. What one quote that really sticks out to me there is when he says towards the beginning, the truth is we can't make a person change. We can't do that. I think that if we can, that can be something very difficult for us as those in helping professions. That can be very difficult for us to accept, that we can't make a person change. We can't save somebody. The best we can do is to support them and hopefully, as he says, guide them towards wanting to make a change. But we can't force it. And if we can accept that truth, that it's impossible to force or to make another person change, I think we can avoid a lot of frustration, a lot of feelings of defeat in our work, a lot of professional despair, and also a lot of burnout. It can really help us sustain ourselves in our professions and preserve our energy if we recognize that the best we can hope to do is to support somebody and walk with them and gently guide them towards considering positive change on their own. Okay, so the next section is covering the spirit of MI or the foundational attitude that we bring to motivational interviewing conversations, the attitude that we bring to the people we support. A quote from Miller and Rolnick is, MI is most centrally defined, not by technique, but by its spirit as a facilitative style for interpersonal conversations and relationship. So they identify that more important than any of the techniques, any of the tools, any of the skills, the most important thing is having the right spirit with which to utilize the techniques. And sort of in this diagram, we can see here that the spirit of MI is where these four elements overlap. It's the confluence of acceptance, compassion, evocation, and partnership. And just to quickly go into a little detail about those four elements that together combined build the spirit of MI. The first one is compassion. So in motivational interviewing, we define compassion as acting out of concern for the individual's well-being and only in their best interest, as perceived by our professional understanding or best judgment. But as we've discussed, that we can have compassion and also not really be utilizing it or directing it in the most effective way. So with compassion and motivational interviewing, it's also sort of targeted in response to each individual's unique needs and desires. And there's no trickery or manipulation or ulterior motives involved. With compassion, we genuinely want to help the individual. We recognize that what worked for others may not work for them. What's important to others may not be important to them. And we give priority to their own preferences and values. With acceptance, very conveniently, acceptance is sort of built up of 4 different components that all start with A's. So in motivational interviewing, acceptance simply means that we accept the individual and what they bring to our engagement, their engagement with us, to the interaction, without any judgment, without approval or disapproval. In going back to the 2 videos that we watched about Oscar and the asthma with Sal. In the first video, I think you would agree, there was a lot of judgment, there was a lot of disapproval on the part of the professional. Whereas in the second, she was much more neutral. She was much more curious and open to sort of trying to understand it and understand where Sal is coming from. So the first part, accurate empathy, is our attempt to accurately understand the client's point of view and to see the world, to see their situation through their eyes. The next one, absolute worth. This is really about recognizing the absolute worth of every individual as a human being and the potential that they have, and that the tremendous loss it is when any one individual's potential is squandered or lost. Affirmation is validation and recognition of each individual's strengths, accomplishments, and efforts. And it's really the opposite of searching for what is wrong and focusing on their deficits and then telling them, how to fix it or why to fix something. It's recognizing that they have a lot of resources, they have a lot of skills and knowledge that is valuable and necessary and potentially very helpful for making positive change. And the last part of acceptance with motivational interviewing is autonomy and support. And bolstering of an individual's autonomy. It's about explicitly recognizing each individual's right to have a choice and to determine, to make determinations in matters affecting them, especially in respect to the target behavior that we're focusing on. Autonomy support also really recognizes that each individual has the right to change or not to change. It's a decision for them to make. The third component of the spirit of MI is about evocation. And this is the piece that's about uncovering or drawing out, calling forth, invoking, and amplifying each individual's own internal reasons and motivation for change. And evocation is about helping draw out and understand what is important to an individual, what they care about, and connecting that to change, guiding them to understanding how making some positive, healthy changes might actually support and increase what they care about. So evocation is about recognizing that everyone holds some sort of internal drive as human beings. It's a natural part of our instinct. It's built into our DNA that we have a drive to survive. We have a drive to maintain health and comfort for our own survival. And with motivational interviewing and with folks struggling with behavioral health issues and substance use issues, we recognize that it's our job to help them access that internal motivation, but not to install it in them. Evocation also recognizes that every client already has what it takes to make a positive change, to make some positive change in their life. They have their unique strengths, resources, wisdom, and experience. So the attitude is sort of, you have what we need, and together we will find it. Together we will uncover it so that you can utilize it in service of your own health. And the last piece is the partnership. This means that we actively foster collaboration and power sharing with the individual, so that their ideas and their values really lead the conversation. I found this little cartoon, this little graphic, but it emphasizes that we as the professional, or we as the support staff, we have education, we have experience, and we have training and techniques to support others with healthy change. But we also recognize that the individual is the expert on themselves and what they need and what may work for them and what they're willing to try at this time. And that neither of us can have success without the other. It really needs to be a partnership and sort of a joining together of what we both bring to the table. So now that we've quickly covered the spirit, the attitude of MI, let's look at some of the core skills. These are the skills that we use most frequently with motivational interviewing, especially to start a conversation and to begin our engagement with somebody. So here's another acronym. The 4 core skills for motivational interviewing change conversation are known as the ORs. And it starts with open-ended questions, followed by affirmations, reflections or reflective listening, and then summaries. And usually the skills are utilized somewhat in this order, although reflections can be sprinkled throughout. And we can think of the ORs, the four ORs skills, as sort of the tools that we use to together row towards positive, healthy change. If that's not too silly for you. Okay, so the first one, I'm gonna give a little introduction to each of the 4 ORs skills, and we will also watch a little video diving into more detail and demonstrating the use of each of these skills. So the first one is open-ended questions. And basically, open-ended questions are questions that cannot be answered with a yes or no response or just a simple one-word response. Open-ended questions provide a lot of latitude for how the individual answers. It's sort of like an invitation to be thoughtful or to consider something more than you would if you're just asking a question that can be answered with a one-word response. So this is like encouraging the development of personal insight. It can be very effective in helping somebody be more thoughtful and also uncover their thoughts about change or their reasons for change that they maybe haven't overtly considered in the past. So a really simple example of the difference with close-ended questions and open-ended questions. This came to me earlier today when I was thinking about this slide. A close-ended question would be, do you like ice cream? If I asked any of you that, I'm quite sure that it would be likely that you would answer either yes or no. Yes, I like ice cream, or I love it. But this really wouldn't give me much to work with. This also wouldn't require you to be very thoughtful about it. And to make this an open-ended question, we could say, tell me some of your thoughts about ice cream. Now, technically, this isn't a question, but it's an invitation. It has the effect of a question. We're inviting somebody to share their thoughts about ice cream. So if somebody were to ask me, tell me some of your thoughts about ice cream, I would say, well, ice cream is great. I love it. I would like to eat it all the time. Some of my favorite flavors are vanilla because it goes well with everything, but I also like, fruit flavors like cherry ice cream and strawberry ice cream. Oh, and blackberry ice cream is really nice when you can get it. But also, the bad thing about ice cream is that it has a lot of dairy, it has a lot of lactose, and that sort of causes me to have phlegm. I don't like that. And also, sort of a negative thing about ice cream is that if you eat it too much, it's high calories. So I feel like I probably need to be careful and limit how much I eat ice cream. It wouldn't be a good thing actually to eat ice cream every day. So now you've learned much more about how I think and how I feel about ice cream, and much more for you to respond to with that. So that was just sort of a non-specific demonstration of the effects of either closed-ended or open-ended questions. Okay, so here's some other examples of open-ended questions that cannot be answered with just a yes or no or a one-word response. That would be probably much more relevant to our work context. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with substances. Going back to what Bill Miller was saying in his video, this isn't directive. We're not asking specifically for somebody to tell us something that we want to hear. We're guiding them towards exploring and sharing and being thoughtful, probably revealing quite a bit about their relationship with substances. What are some goals for yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? Where would you like to see yourself? Where do you hope to be in the next couple of years? This helps somebody uncover their motivation or their desires, their values. How would you like things to be different? What are some good things about using, and also some of the less good things? We want to acknowledge and be pragmatic that individuals who use are likely using because they feel there's value to their use. There are some benefits that they're getting. And so we don't want to completely deny that or pretend like it's not there, because that's just not realistic. But we follow it up by then asking them to share if there's anything that's sort of not so good about use. And similarly, what do you think you might lose if you were to stop using? What are some of the reasons basically that you haven't changed? What are some reasons that you are still using? And then follow it up by, what do you think you might gain if you were to stop using? This gets somebody to sort of consider both sides of the ambivalence, both sides of the fence, and help them work through their ambivalence. Okay, there's another slide with some examples, but I'll leave it to you to review it if you'd like when we send out the slides, so we make sure we don't go over time. So the next part, one of us this morning talked about affirmations. Mentioned that she's found affirmations to be really helpful and to now sort of come naturally in her work with others. So affirmations highlight the positive and acknowledge that which is good or going well with an individual. And the affirmations really overlap with both compassion and empathy. And a good quote that I found that relate to affirmations is that people are more likely to spend time with, trust, listen to, and to be open with people who recognize them and affirm their strengths. We feel really good about ourselves when somebody else reflects back something that they see that we're doing well, or a strength that we have. So some examples of affirmations in the motivational interviewing style might be, you've been working really hard and you've had some successes. You've come a long way from where you were. You handled yourself really well in that situation. You did a few things that really show your commitment to change. You're really proving how strong you can be. All of this is very validating, and it's a little deeper than just saying, I think you're doing a great job, or I see how far you've come. Also notice in that all of these examples, the affirmations begin with you or your, and that's about keeping the focus on the individual. So something interesting about affirmations is that they're in motivational interviewing, affirmations are very distinct from praise. Praise usually centers the interviewer or ourselves and our opinions rather than the individual's positive traits or accomplishments. And praise can come across as top down, as superior and patronizing, like we're patting someone on the head. So notice that all of the ones on the left start with I, but then we can sort of change it to an affirmation by removing the I and recentering the other individual. So instead of saying I'm proud of you, how about you have a lot to be proud of? Maybe not so much I think you've done great so far, but just stating you've done great so far. I know you're working really hard to you're working really hard. And I believe you can be strong. I believe in you to you can be strong. All right, the next in the ORs, the third skill in the basic skills for motivational interviewing is reflections, or active reflective listening. And reflections are really about reflecting back what the individual has shared with you, reflecting back what you think the other person is saying to you or what they're likely feeling. And this can have a very powerful effect. This definitely is the most powerful of the 3 ORS skills, especially for individuals who aren't used to being listened to, or aren't used to feeling heard and seen and validated. So reflections are, as I said, a response to something that the client says, and it's the response that we make that offers a guess or a rephrasing about what the client means. So you do not need to feel that you are necessarily agreeing with the other person or encouraging their thoughts or feelings when you offer a reflection. It's really just demonstrating to them that you understand them and that you've heard them, and that you're curious and you're following along with what they're telling you. So, for example, here's some sample reflections. The other person tells you, I feel nervous around other people, and a drink helps me relax. A reflection might be, you like feeling comfortable around others, and alcohol is something that makes that easier. The next one, the job just really takes all my energy. A little bump makes it possible for me to get through the shift. It doesn't even really get me high. So what the person is really saying here, what we want to reflect back to them, is not the effectiveness of the substance that's helping them get through the shift, but letting them know we hear what's important to them. It's important to you not to be tired at work. We're not condemning, we're not becoming alarmist or reactive that they've shared that they're using drugs while at work. We're just following along with them and reflecting to them that we hear them. And the last one, sometimes I just feel like giving up. I've been trying so hard to do everything right, but it doesn't seem like it will ever be enough for her. The reflection is, you'd like your partner to recognize how hard you've been working and give you a little credit. This is really getting to the emotion that the person is conveying with their statement, letting them know that we're empathizing with them and that we're understanding their feelings accurately. So reflections take a lot of skill and practice, and sometimes people feel a lack of confidence about offering reflections. But you can start small. You can start really simple just by rephrasing or rewording what somebody has said before you start getting into more complex reflections that are sort of attempting to get at the emotion behind someone's words. So at this point, I found a video about reflections, motivational interviewing reflections, that I think gives a really good introduction to the power of reflections. And interestingly, this is from a motivational interviewing trainer who is a PhD and a registered dietitian. So her work context is very different from all of ours, but throughout the whole video, there's nothing that is specific about working with folks about issues of nutrition and diet. It's all applicable to any sort of setting. And this video is just about 3 minutes.
It feels good to be heard, doesn't it? And we can show our clients that we're listening through the power of reflective listening. My name's Dawn Clifford. I'm a motivational interviewing trainer, one of the authors of this book, Motivational Interviewing and Nutrition and Fitness, a nutrition and public health professor, and today's motivational interviewing tip of the day is reflective listening. Again, reflective listening is one of the OARs. The OARs are the micro skills of motivational interviewing, standing for open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. Reflective listening is one of the most important skills to master in motivational interviewing. In fact, you want to aim for 2 reflective listening statements for every 1 open-ended question. That shows you how important reflective listening is. In a nutshell, you want to aim to use a reflective listening response almost every time the client speaks. What's beautiful about reflective listening is it shows the client that you're really listening and that you're really trying to understand what it's like to be them. When you think about reflective listening and what exactly you should reflect back to the client, think specifically about not just what they're saying with their words, but what they're really experiencing. There are 2 types of reflections, simple reflections and complex reflections. If you notice that there's almost an echo in the room because you're just repeating back exactly what the client's saying, chances are good that you're primarily using simple reflections. And those are fine at first as you're building rapport to kind of stay close to what the client's saying. But as you get more comfortable with the client, start taking some guesses. Transition more to complex reflections, where you reflect what you hear, but your reflection kind of goes beyond what the client's saying, and you start taking guesses at what the client is experiencing. In these complex reflections, you're referring to specific emotions they may be experiencing, and you're taking guesses at what they would say if they were to keep talking. Those complex reflections really move the conversation forward. Reflective listening is, again, one of the most important skills to master in motivational interviewing. And a simple way to start is to simply make an effort to start reflecting every time you hear the client speak. Now, you don't have to reflect all of what they say back to them. In fact, the most powerful reflections can be the shortest reflections. So simply listen very carefully to what they're saying with their mouth, what they're saying with their body, and pick out just a key piece that you'd like them to hear back. Often, reflective listening focuses on change talk. So especially when you hear change talk, that is the most important time to use reflective listening. My name's Dawn Clifford. This has been your motivational interviewing tip of the day, the power of reflective listening.
All right, I like the way she explains reflections. All right, so just to reiterate, she mentioned that a good ratio is to each question that we ask somebody, try to offer 2 reflections. This really keeps the conversations from feeling like an interrogation, like rapid fire questions coming at somebody, and rather making it feel like a supportive conversation, and where we're really able to empathize and really able to follow what somebody's telling us and to get at the feeling behind it, and that what they're saying is important to us. So the last of the 4 core skills of motivational interviewing is the S, the summaries. And summaries can be thought of as sort of a combination or a grouping together of reflections towards the end of one stage of the conversation. Their summaries are really useful when we feel it's time to sort of gently shift the direction of the conversation or to move the conversation forward. So summaries reinforce what has already been said and also have the effect of demonstrating that we've been listening carefully. Summaries are usually brief, just about 3 to 5 sentences. And they're a great way to sort of reinforce what the next steps are for somebody, or to remind them of what they've said, to sort of package up all of their new insights or their interesting ideas, their interesting and powerful reasons and motivations for change, package them up in a neat package and offer them back so that they're more likely to be remembered. So this is just an example of a summary that would come at the end of a conversation after there's already been some open-ended questions and affirmations and lots of reflections. When it's sort of getting towards time to shift the conversation or to move on to another topic, this might be the summary. The stress of your divorce has set you back. You really want to give up using again. You really want to stop using, but you've been struggling. Being able to be with your child again is really important to you, and you'll do whatever it takes to make that possible. And you've committed to attending 2 meetings tomorrow and then every day next week. Did I get all that right? So you can see, I think that's 5 sentences, but here we've summarized what's been going on for the individual, what they've shared with us. Also, we are reminding them what they've said is really important to them. And we're reflecting that we hear that, and we validate that as important. And we're also reminding them of the next steps, the action steps that they've committed to. And finally, by saying, did I get all that right? We're sort of inviting the other person to correct us if we forgot anything, or to add on anything else that they feel is really important to repeat at the end. So there's a video in here that we're not going to have time to watch today, but this is a useful video because it actually shows you on the screen when each of the 4 OARS skills are being used by the professional in the conversation. What I found today is that when I exported this slides as a PDF, I could still click on the videos and they opened correctly in YouTube. So everybody, Brianna's going to send you out the slides, and hopefully you'll be able to watch this video and rewatch the others if you'd like. But moving on. So now we've covered the 4 elements of the spirit or the foundational attitude of motivational interviewing, and we've also talked about the 4 core skills, the OARS. So just to make it clear what the next step in motivational interviewing is, usually what the next focus is in motivational interviewing training or education is talking about change talk. And what change talk is the language that we are able to elicit from an individual in favor of making healthy change, their reasons, their ideas, and their motivations for change. So our goal with motivational interviewing is always to elicit and draw out that change talk from the individual, and then to reflect it back to them, to amplify it, to encourage it, and to pull for more in order to deepen their motivation and commitment for change. And the way we do that, we're not going to go into detail about this today, but the way that we elicit and then amplify that change talk with folks is known through a process of well, it's known as the 4 processes of motivational interviewing, and that's engaging, focusing, evoking, and planning. The engaging stage is the first stage, and that's when we're really relying on the OARS skills, the four skills that we just covered. The engaging period is about building trust and developing rapport in the helping relationship. It's helping an individual know that we're not trying to direct them, we're not trying to control them. We're interested in supporting them and seeing things from their point of view. After that has been accomplished, we can then focus the conversation. And the way that we decide what to focus on is really the choice of the individual. we maybe present many options of what we know about their current situation, and ask them, knowing all of that and having had a successful opening to our conversation with OR skills, what are they interested in focusing on for the rest of the conversation today? And then evoking. And that's where, as I've said a couple of times, that's drawing out the individual's reasons, motivation, and ideas for healthy change, as well as possible resources and skills and experiences that they can draw on to make success more likely for them. And the final part that we do with the processes of motivational interviewing is planning. It's agreeing on action steps. It's helping an individual make a commitment to next steps now that they've uncovered some of their reasons and motivation for change. And it's really whatever they're ready for. We're not imposing or even necessarily suggesting any particular steps, but it's helping them come up with ideas about what might feel comfortable, feel right, feel ready for them to take steps on next. And it might just be agreeing to meeting again and having another conversation with us. Okay, so now is the point where I'd like to share two specific tools that come from motivational interviewing that I find to be very useful and also applicable in lots of situations. And the first one is known as the readiness ruler. I believe her name was Lila. I can't see everybody's name right now, but she made reference to this. Basically, the readiness ruler is asking people to let us know where they're at right now with how they're feeling about the importance of making a certain change, and also where they're at with their confidence in their ability to make this change. So this would come, by the time we're using the readiness ruler, we've already gone through the engagement stage where we've used all of our OR skills. And we've also focused on the particular type of change or the area somebody would like to discuss changing. And we've evoked their reasons and their motivation, and now we're planning. So they've come up with some next steps that they feel comfortable with. And now we're using the readiness ruler to, first of all, ask somebody, how important is making this change to you? And they will ask them to tell us on a scale of 0 to 10, from not ready to change at all to all the way to completely ready to change. I'm absolutely motivated. I'm ready to change today. Then we ask them we don't ask them, why is your importance level so high? But we ask them why they're at this number instead of a lower number. And the reason that this is effective is because it gets the individual to tell us why this is so important to them. So it's amplifying their commitment. The next step is asking them, how confident or ready do you feel to make this change? And if an individual tells us, well, right now I'm feeling about a 6. I'm not totally confident, but I'm feeling okay. We can then ask them, what do you think would need to happen to move you from a 6 to a 7 or an 8? What do you think, what type of support would you need, or what type of information would you need to increase your confidence? And this is effective because it's supporting somebody to elicit their own ideas for what they need or for what would be helpful for them. All right, have any of you, besides, it sounded like Lila has definitely used the readiness ruler or that concept before. Has anybody else ever used this tool? Maybe not. Okay. Well, I'd like to take a minute to give someone the opportunity to use it if anybody is willing to be a volunteer. The only thing you need to do is to share with us. It can be made up, or it can be true to you, some sort of change that you've been thinking about or you've been considering maybe making in your life? Any sort of thing like stopping smoking, giving up meat, increasing physical activity? Anybody willing to volunteer? Too close to lunch, I think. We have a backup if Brianna is willing. Are you
Mhm.
game, Brianna?
Yeah, well, let's go.
Okay. All right. So Brianna, can you tell us about a change that you've been thinking about considering?
Yes, so I have been considering working out more. I feel like the past 3 years since I had my son, I just haven't found time to exercise or move my body as much as I would like. So that's caused me to gain weight and a lot of low energy. But it's also really hard because a lot of my time is spent, with him, and he's 3 and he has so much energy. And so it's all taking care of him. So it's just hard to find the time to actually commit to it, and then also try to find options for him while I do it. Tried doing it from
Yeah.
home, and he's just 3 years old, so he'll jump on my back and just not let me really get to it. So it's
Yeah.
been hard.
So there's lots of reasons why it's difficult for you to find the
Mhm,
time
mhm,
and the space to
mhm,
exercise more, but
mhm,
also feeling better and feeling healthier is really important to you.
mhm. Yeah, I think it would
Uh,
give me more energy to actually
yeah,
be able to take care of him if I did. It's just finding that time to
yeah. So
do
it's
it in a pathway.
mm, it's
Mhm,
sort of this counterintuitive thing that if you can find the time to do something extra, you'll actually have more energy to do everything else also.
mhm. Yeah,
Mm.
definitely.
So right now, on a scale of 0 to 10, how important would you say this making this change is to you?
I would say it's in between like a 3 and 4 because I'm still functioning. It would be nice, but it's also, I just feel really discouraged because I've tried and it's
Yeah.
been hard. So I'm
So
kind of in my mind, I'm like, maybe I'll just wait for him to get a little bit older.
it's not the most important thing to you right now, and there's been some
No.
discouragements. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're at a 3 or a 4.
Hmm.
Why do you think you're at a 3 or a 4 and not a 1 or 2? What
Um,
makes it more important to you than a 1 or a 2?
because I know if I don't do it, that it just could get worse. I could get less energy. I could gain more weight. So yeah, it might actually be like a 4. It might be a 5. Actually, I didn't really read it
Mm.
correctly. So maybe more of a 5 or 6. Yeah, that would be more accurate. Yeah.
All right, all right. So, yeah, even though it's hard to imagine jumping right into it,
Mm-hmm.
you are eager to feel better, and you believe that
Yes.
this definitely would help you feel better and have more energy.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to decide to make this change, how
Mm-hmm.
confident would you say that you are? Um, how confident are you in your readiness to embark on this change and to maintain a commitment to it on a scale of
Um,
0 to 10?
from 0 to 10, probably the same. I think once I commit to it, I'd stay committed because it would take you know, um, a lot of planning and stuff to execute it. So I think I would stay committed to it if I did. So probably like a
Hmm.
7.
Oh, okay, a 7. All right.
Yeah.
So that's pretty high.
Yeah.
Um, can you imagine what would it take to get you to feel around an 8 or a 9, just a little bit more confident? What kind of support would you need or assistance with your son?
Yes, so if I could find somebody who could watch him for like the 2 hours or so while I went and did it, that I felt comfortable with, that would definitely bring it up to like a 8 or a 9.
Mm,
Yeah, somewhere where he would have fun being too, because I also feel a little bit of guilt, like leaving him for 2 hours when he's already, going to daycare and preschool. So
mhm.
somewhere where it'd be fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you. You want to do this for yourself, but not have it
I-
cause any disadvantages for your
Right.
son.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Brianna.
You're welcome.
That was really interesting. I noticed that especially the first time, Brianna sort of adjusted her answer as she continued talking and exploring her thoughts about this change. And I did not coach her to do that, but that was really great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, Brianna, how did you feel about that conversation? I
Good.
honestly, I don't know if this is truly something you've been considering
No, it
or
is.
not.
Yes, it is. Yeah. It felt good. It felt good because it made me realize, I think towards the end of it, I think it's not just me. I think I'm pretty motivated to do it, but it's more of like that guilt that I feel of leaving him for
Mm.
another 2 hours when I'm already away from him for part of the day. So it was good to talk about it and explore that, because I think if I did find somewhere that it would be fun for him for a couple hours and I could get the support with it, it'd be something I'd want to do. So
Yeah. And if we're going to continue with that conversation, I think that would be the next logical step, is
Mhm.
to help you explore what might your options be for finding a place for your son to be
Mhm.
happy
Yeah.
and yeah, during that time. Yeah. Okay. Um, so it sounds like just that little brief conversation with the readiness ruler, it helped you sort of uncover some of the issues that are causing you to have this ambivalence, that are keeping you from making the change right now.
Mhm.
And that can be very useful, because then you can think through each of those components individually and sort of break it down
Mhm.
and tackle each one by one to see sort of how your ambivalence might shift.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
All right. One more tool. And I asked Brianna to send out little worksheets or things that you can look at for both of these tools after this presentation. But the next one is known as decisional balance. And this is really about helping somebody weigh the pros and cons. We can think of this as a pros and cons list, sort of on steroids, or going to the gym and lifting a lot of weights. Instead of just the pros or cons about one side of an issue, we're talking about, we first ask somebody to think about the advantages that they might realize if they do make a change, and also the disadvantages, things that they might lose, or negative outcomes that might happen if they were to change. And then we go through and talk about the advantages of not changing. For example, for Brianna, she would have those 2 hours to spend with her son and feel less guilty about all the time that she's away from him if she were to not change. But then finally, we end with the disadvantages, the cons of not changing. And it's important to end on this, because then this is part of the guiding. Typically, the last part is where it'll have the most weight. And so we're ending on what would be the downside, the negative side, if you decide not to make any change right now. And that tends to have the effect of getting somebody to realize they don't want to be stuck with that. They don't want to accept that situation. So then once somebody has you've talked them through this decisional balance worksheet, you can ask them, now that you've thought through all of that, what do you think are the most important points for everything that you've mentioned above? Because not everything is going to be equal weight. But then after that, based on all of that, what do you think you will do? Where does that leave you? What do you think the next steps might be? And this is all a useful tool in supporting somebody through change conversations. Okay, so unfortunately, we did not have enough time left for much questions and answers or discussion. But hopefully we will be able to continue this conversation at some point. And also, you know, I've heard some of you talk about sharing information with your staff or supervising others with some of these skills. So hopefully these are some question points that could be useful for you in discussions with your colleagues. And there's also a slide here towards the end listing some resources, some books, workbooks, online training courses and videos that you can access, and demonstration videos, more examples of some of the skills of motivational interviewing, if that's interesting and useful for you. And I just want to mention that you are welcome to email me with any questions, comments, or suggestions you have. My email's here on this last slide. Also, Brianna will be sending out, I believe, an electronic survey to request your feedback and suggestions for how we can improve these webinars in the future. And as she mentioned, a video recording will be uploaded to the Walker website and to YouTube. And for that, I want to thank everyone for their time. Thank you for sticking with us all the way to the end. And I'll pass it back over to Brianna.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming today. And if you were on here today, I will be able to send you the PDF of the slides, the survey, as well as those extra resources that Garrett mentioned. So just be on the lookout for that. And thank you. I hope to see you at some of the webinars coming up.
Yes.
Thank you
all
so
for your
very much.
participation today. Have a great day. See you soon.
Yeah.